Okay, let's talk about one of India's biggest and for sure one of its most controversial YouTubers, Rathee. His videos get tens of millions of views. But who is the guy behind the camera? What really drives him? We're going to break down a recent, really in-depth interview to try and understand the man behind those viral explainers.
To really get a sense of his influence, you have to start with this number: over 30 million subscribers. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that's a bigger audience than a lot of national news networks have, all controlled by one independent creator. It's just massive.
But, with that kind of reach comes some pretty intense criticism. This line right here, "Dhruv is a German shepherd," is an insult you see thrown at him all the time. It's basically mocking him for criticizing India while he's living in Germany. This is pretty much the main attack he has to deal with constantly.
So, how does he handle being called an outsider? Well, that brings us right to our first section, unpacking his role as the outsider critic.
And this is where it gets really interesting. He completely flips this insult on its head. When people call him a German shepherd, he fires back that the RSS, that's the Hindu nationalist organization that inspires a lot of his critics, actually has its own historical ties to 1930s Germany and Italy, claiming their paramilitary style was an inspiration. And he doesn't just defend his location, he actually frames it as a huge advantage. He argues that being away from the day-to-day political hype in India gives him a better perspective. It helps him stay grounded, and stops the fame from going to his head. But his critiques don't just stop at politics. He also dives deep into what he calls propaganda in pop culture, and he points his finger directly at Bollywood. He makes this really bold claim that a whole wave of recent Bollywood movies, they aren't just for entertainment. In his view, they're actually carefully designed pieces of political propaganda made to push a pro-government story. And this quote, it shows you he does not hold back. His style is super unfiltered. He uses this kind of sharp, really provocative language to call out film directors that he thinks are just cozying up to India's ruling party, the BJP. So how does he think this whole system works? He breaks it down into this three-step process that he says is run by the censor board. Step 1, green light any film that's pro-government. Step 2, block or censor anything that's critical of the government. And then step 3, he alleges they actually force filmmakers to add pro-government messages into movies that have nothing to do with politics. And this is a big deal, right? Because it raises serious questions about freedom of speech and the whole role of art in a democracy. Okay, so we've heard a lot about what he's against. But what is he actually for? This brings us to his own political philosophy, the values he says are behind everything he does. He basically boils his entire worldview down to these three core pillars. First, rationalism, having a scientific outlook. Second is liberty, especially freedom of speech. That's a huge one for him. And third, tolerance, the simple idea that different people and ideas have to be able to coexist. So the next logical question is pretty obvious, right? Does he think there's any political party in India that actually stands for these things?
And his answer is, well, it's not so simple. He doesn't back anyone. He says that while parties might talk a good game about these ideals, at the end of the day, their actions are all about winning elections. He's convinced that in India today, a politician just couldn't win by running purely on these values, so he stays away from endorsing any of them.
So if he doesn't believe in any of the current parties, what's his solution? What's his big vision for how India should actually be run? He argues that this whole obsession in India with finding one single strong leader is just fundamentally wrong. He says there's no way one person can run a country with over 1 billion people. So what's his fix? A strong team of specialists, where the experts in each field are actually the ones calling the shots. And where would this dream team start? He's got 3 top priorities. Number 1, the environment, for basic stuff like clean air and water. Number 2, education, to help people reach their potential. And number 3, healthcare, which he sees as one of the best ways to pull people out of poverty. Now, his frustration with the current way of doing things really boils over with what is, without a doubt, the most explosive thing he said in the entire interview. He directly compares the prime minister to a donkey. Whoa. So why would he say something that provocative? Well, here's his reasoning. He argues that an actual donkey would just do nothing. And in his view, doing nothing would be better than what he sees as the active destruction of the country's institutions. For him, inaction would actually be an upgrade. Ultimately, the rise of a voice like Dhruv, a powerful independent creator, It signals a huge change in how we get our information. And whether you're a huge fan or you can't stand him, his story makes us ask a really important question. In this new age where one person can have an audience bigger than many countries, who is it that's really shaping our reality? And what does that mean for all of us?